But I look at some of the concepts of the way things used to be years ago, and compared to entitlement, and people would work for the things that they wanted, didn't they? Many of you, most of you probably, have had the opportunity to work hard for something and to put money away for that and to get to the point to where you could finally afford to buy it. I remember my parents, my dad always worked 2 jobs. He was a truck mechanic for many years. Started off in the Army teaching mechanics over in France, and then came back to the States and went to work for White Motor Company in downtown DC, and they did whites and autocars and Freightliners and all that kind of stuff. And then, before I was born, because they wanted some extra money and needed some extra money, my dad said, well, I'm going to get another job as a gas station attendant. So he did. Well, the way things worked out is the owner was older, and my dad ended up running the place, and so he did the trucking thing, in the mornings, and he ended up being promoted into sales, so he really enjoyed that. So he was selling trucks during the day, and then at night he would stop by the gas station, make sure everything was good. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturdays he'd be there working, and you did what you had to do. You did what you had to do. I remember them telling us boys that we would be well off, pretty smart, they said, if we were to at least save half of the money that we needed for our first car. I remember them saying that, boy, if you could do that on your first home, that would really be good. But the point I want to make is that in that culture, and in the culture that many of us are familiar with, that we grew up in, you needed extra money or you needed extra resources, you did things for them. Sometimes today people, I think, feel too entitled. What happens is it takes away entitlement, much of the blessing, if you will, of the work. It takes away some of the value that we hold in things. You want that first car, and today you could pretty much go out with a next to nothing down payment and get one, and now you're tied to that thing. Has anybody ever been there? Or you could work toward it, and you could save toward it, and you could get to the point to where, okay, I've got a reasonable amount to put down on this thing, or maybe even buy it all together. And there's an added value in that. There's an added value in accomplishing something, in planning something out, into working towards something, in just seeing this value that is worth taking something away from yourself, putting yourself in another direction, working extra hard, if you will, in order to accomplish something. It's valuable. Would you agree with that or not? Yes or no?
Yes.
How many of you had grandparents that worked their butts off? Yeah. Because that's what you did. And how many of you had grandparents in those Sunday afternoons where you would get over to Grandma and Grandpa's house, and the time was so valuable because all of a sudden we're setting aside the work week. We're setting aside what we need to do for family time. You guys have that? Sure. Many of you. What's that?
Chocolate pie.
Oh, chocolate pie. Sign me up. When it comes to the culture today, again, there's basically 3 different what's the word I'm looking for? Generations, I guess, living today with the grandmas and grandpas that grew up in that culture of work. Then there's the kids of those that have had lots of opportunities. I know growing up, I've had tremendous opportunities. I really have. I've had the opportunity to work. I've had the opportunity to go to school. I've had the opportunity for lots of things, extra jobs and playing music and you name it. A lot of things that my parents didn't have. And now I look at my kids, millennials or whatever you want to call them, and the opportunities are just far, far expanded, aren't they? Let me tell you what. We live in the right country, in the right place of the world. We live in the right spot in the United States. And there's more opportunity here today than any of our generations have had before. The question is whether or not we see the value in that. Somebody comes home and says, "Guess what, Mom and Dad? I'm going to have a baby." And we immediately realize the value of that human life. We love that child, even though maybe we haven't met them yet. I don't know of anybody that has valued a loved one, cared for a loved one, and not their children. Yeah, there's lots of different things that happen in the world today, but overall, we have this instinctive aspect of our human being, of our life, to love those that God has given to us and that God puts in our life. Jesus said this. Jesus said to his disciples, "If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Those are the words I want you to wrestle with today. Because if you don't see the value in this, it's meaningless. Because this, you talk about giving up and denying yourself and working hard toward that first car or that first home or to pay off bills or whatever. We see the value in it. We're willing to put forth and we're willing to do whatever is necessary in order to accomplish the goal. This is the ultimate one. Jesus said to his disciples, if any man will come after me, what does that mean? Just follow him? That's not what he's talking about. He's saying if you want to be like me, if you want to serve God the same way that I serve the Father, if you want to be part of the mission and the ministry of what I'm doing here on the earth, then the first thing you got to do is deny yourself. Now, those are not popular words, especially in postmodern 21st century culture. Are you kidding me? Deny myself of all of the wonderful things that I'm entitled to? I've heard that before. I'm not saying that everyone here has an entitlement mentality at all. What I'm saying is that we fight against that in this culture, in the world today. And it keeps us away from what Jesus said is one of the most difficult steps of human life. And that is to follow after him, to be a disciple of Christ. Do you know what that means? Being a disciple is not just believing in Jesus. It's not just reading your Bible on a Sunday afternoon. Believing in Jesus is not just taking all of the blessings and the good things and the fellowship and all of those wonderful things and saying, this is great, this is a wonderful experience, I love living this way. Being a disciple of Jesus says, deny yourself. That's not popular at all. At all. How many of you want to give up things? How many of you want to turn away from your own goals and aspirations in life? Nobody. But see, what Jesus was saying was that you need to be willing to do that. You got to be willing to give up that which is near and dear to you. if you want to follow him faithfully. Now, that doesn't mean that God doesn't want us to be blessed, that he doesn't want us to live a good life, that he doesn't want us to be happy in life and experience. I'm not trying to say that at all. There might be some of those times. There might be some of those experiences ahead of you. Maybe you've been through some. But what he's saying is the attitude of our hearts needs to be such that we are willing to give up all that is important to us for his sake. That's what he's saying. And again, the culture fights against us in that because we live in this entitlement society. Psychologists, they put it this way. Let me see if I can find it here. An exaggerated sense of entitlement. This is from Psychology Today. I read this because Colin's studying psychology down in Ann Arbor, and I kind of like to, he sends me stuff sometimes. An exaggerated sense of entitlement makes us say, I don't care about how you feel, but I expect you to care about how I feel. Now, can anybody here relate to that? I see it all the time. I see it all the time, where it's all about me. You see, we always seem to circle back to these things on the cross. This entitlement society says it is all about you. It's about the things that you're entitled to, the things that you want, the goals, the aspirations that you have in your heart, the opportunities that the world should be giving to you. It's all about what you want. And Jesus says, I'm sorry, but if you're in line with me, if you are going to follow me, if you're going to be a part of what I'm doing in the world, if you're going to be a part of the plan of God, if you really want to be that, then dude, you got to give up yourself. Do you want to do that? A lot of times we say, oh yeah, I want to do that. Absolutely. It's all me and you, Jesus. Yep, it's all about us. Sometimes we feel like Spanky. I'd rather go fishing. How many of you used to watch Spanky in our gang, huh? Wasn't that a cool show? But you see, Jesus reminds us here in this scripture that it is about him, not so much us. That is such an unpopular topic in the world today. It's so foreign from what so many people can understand in today's postmodern world. Because the postmodern world says it is about me. And Jesus contradicts it right up front. And he says, let him deny himself and take up his cross. What does that mean? Take up your cross. We all have to carry this big wooden cross around? No. What does it mean? It means that we need to be willing to do the will of God as opposed to the will of Joe. It means that no matter where God calls me, I would be willing to go. It means no matter what I want to do, which might be very good, it might be very beneficial and helpful to many people, but God's will takes priority in my life. I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, half the time I don't know if God's speaking to me or not. God has spoken to all of you. You want to know where? It's in the scriptures. Read it. Study it. Meditate on it. Sometimes God will call us to different things. Like Onita said earlier, it was very kindly reminding everybody, we need help in the nursery. No, I'm not trying to guilt you into that. I don't want anybody doing anything out of guilt. If you guys don't know me by now, you know that. I don't want anybody doing anything around this church that they don't feel called to do. Why is that? Because it's a poor representation of what God is and all about, and it is a very poor example to other people. Because what do we do when we are doing something we don't want to do? We grumble. Or we got this overcast look with us. If you're serving in the nursery, it should be a good experience. If you're greeting out front, it should be a good experience. If you're at Meijer and you ask the checkout girl that, you want to go to church Sunday, it should be with this wonderful attitude that what I'm doing is good. What I'm doing I love. What I'm doing I like. So we need to deny who we are. We need to deny our own self-will. We need to take up our cross, regardless of how difficult it is. Regardless. Doesn't make any difference. And some of us have a very difficult cross to carry. Some of us don't. Some of us haven't even seen the weight of the cross yet. And he says, follow me. What does that mean? Follow me. Really what he's saying is become committed to me. Be mine. Be my child. Be my obedient children. The speaking of God to his people through his word is really very plain. Part of our problem as his children is we don't always want to listen. It's no different than I was when I was a kid. Did I always listen to mom and dad? Heck no. I was naughty. I didn't want to listen to that crap. And it's just kind of the way we are as people. We want to control things ourselves. We want to have our own agendas. We want to fulfill the things that we feel, that we can do in life and that are interesting to us. And, we want to choose our own direction and go for it. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as we place the will of God first in our life. And for most of us, the will of God, we will understand and we will realize through the reading of his word. He says, if you want to come after me, if you want to be mine, deny yourself, take up your cross, and then be committed to me. Commitment. Commitment. Make sure that you understand that commitment to Christ, and I say this often, will cost you everything. Maybe you're already there. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're unsure. You see, one of the problems that I have with the Christian church today in the world is it's easy. It's easy to say I'm a Christian. It's easy to go to church on Sunday morning. It's easy to be a part of the fellowship and all. It's easy to do all of these things that we're so used to. But it's difficult to turn my will over to the will of God. It really is. So what does it mean to deny myself, follow Jesus, and walk after him?